So in my first theory, the swallowing of the sun, I admitted that HaSeul and Yojin were roadblocks I hadn't yet figured out. I'm gonna try and change that by observing HaSeul especially closely today. Let Me In, as far as the 1/3 era goes, is one giant mystery. Vivid serves the purpose of declaring LOONA and what it's about. Around You tells a mundane story of the mundane real world, while teaching the viewer how to recognize 1/3's members. Kiss Later is a contained story about boundaries. Every Day I Love You is a call forward to another member's revelations about the Looniverse. Let Me In definitely tells a story and showcases important events, but figuring out what any of it means is a chore. I want to examine the parts of this MV, first in how they can be related to members of 1/3, then in how they can be related to members of Odd Eye Circle, and then in how they can be related to YYXY. First, after the diamond is introduced, we see our first full shot of the bird HaSeul, which shows a diamond placed over its left eye. You could easily relate this to the odd eyes, but to me it more closely resembles the glowing left eye of Vivi, resident android. But as far as 1/3 goes, this seems to be the only thing I found. I don't think that metaphor goes anywhere, at least right now, so let's move on to Odd Eye Circle. If you'll remember, I mentioned in the first theory that there's a sharp difference in how Earth is contextualized in the LOONA world versus how the mid-cosmos world of Odd is shown to us. The former is urban, populated, and fairly normal. The latter is wild, uninhabited, and serene. The Solheimsonder area that HaSeul travels to in Let Me In much more closely resembles the world of Odd than Earth. Is it possible HaSeul has actually entered that world? We see a broken down fuselage of a plane, which calls to mind the run-down theater Kim Lip danced in and the ruins of the building Cherry woke up in. There's also the yellow truck she arrives in, which we see in Girlfront. No one seems to be driving it when she arrives, which is weird to say the least. It could just be because they didn't want a random person showing up in HaSeul's video, but there were ways of getting around that. Girlfront takes place on Earth, but if I'm going to make a case for Let Me In taking place in the world of Odd, perhaps it's fair to posit that something about this vehicle lets it travel between the worlds of the Looniverse. On to YYXY. I think you'll be interested to hear what I found out here, because it mostly revolves around the diamond, the biggest metaphor of the video. The diamond appears several times, and in the first sequence we also see a diamond graphic, positioned in the air over the bird HaSeul's head. This is what set off my curiosity because it reminded me of something I know to be another metaphor. We'll take this to the YYXY story, specifically One and Only. In that video we saw chandeliers used as visual metaphor for Go-Won's crown, and her crown itself was a symbol of self-rule, tying her rejection of Eden to self-love. That sort of metaphor happened again in Love Forever, where the chandelier was positioned over Eve, Chu, and Go-Won, the 3 members who had rejected Eden, and Olivia, the 1 member who had not, was off to the side. The diamond also bears a bit of resemblance in its small, pear-like shape to a strawberry. Who do you think of when that fruit comes to mind? It's Chu, who we know to be HaSeul's Eden counterpart. And if you'll permit me to talk about Chu's video for a moment, I can get to what I think this diamond is truly representative of. Heart Attack is a curious little video because it's a direct reference to the story of the Little Match Girl, by Hans Christian Andersen. In that story, a little girl is trying to sell matches in winter to make money, but no one takes any notice of her. She's too afraid to go home since her father will beat her for not selling any, so instead she huddles in the snow and lights a match to keep warm. In the light of the flame, she sees comforting visions of her grandmother, the only person to treat her with any kindness. She also sees a shooting star, and her grandmother tells her that when you see one of those, it's a sign that someone is on their way to heaven. Desperate to keep the visions going, the girl lights all of the matches, freezing to death once they go out. It puts quite the unsettling spin on Chu, who does indeed seem to see visions of someone she loves bringing her joy before apparently dying. But the truth is that she just fell to Earth, where HaSeul wakes her up. Thus, we have the metaphor we need. The diamonds HaSeul finds on the ground in Solheimsonder, set against the jet black sand, are intended to create the image of stars against the night sky, which means that what we see when we see HaSeul use one as slingshot ammo is a shooting star. The carrying someone to heaven part could refer to HaSeul killing the Birdman version of her, which then ascended to Eden and became Chu, but that's a shot in the dark. Who is the little match girl here, Chu or HaSeul? The more I think about it, the more I think it's HaSeul. There's even small flashes of light that look like flames in between certain shots. Let's focus a little more on Chu so we can get more involved in the Little Match Girl's story. You see, Hans Christian Andersen, who also wrote The Little Mermaid and The Ugly Duckling, the latter of which Eve's assigned animal is based on, is not the only reference made in Chu's video. The description also lists Renee Magritte, an artist, and those references are quite clear. The listening room, a peach-colored room with a massive apple sitting inside, is perfectly recreated in Heart Attack. Although I myself don't subscribe to such a theory, a popular one is that while in the listening room, Chu sees what she wants to see, which is Eve returning her love and sharing New Year's Eve with her. Something similar happens in Let Me In, but instead of Chu pointing a camera out of the listening room window, it's HaSeul peering out of the windows of the fuselage at Solheima Sonder and seeing what she's after, her bird self. Later on, instead of her bird self shooting her the way Eve shot the arrow through Chu's heart, the inverse happens, with HaSeul shooting down the bird. Let's look at the actual fairy tale itself. One of the first things we see is a description of the girl running after a carriage and failing to catch it. She's described as having fair hair, which should put you in mind of 3 LOONA members, discounting Vivi and Jinsel for the time being. One is Bird HaSeul, another is Kimlip when chasing down the carriage Cherry was in, and the third is Gowon when chasing down the exact car we see in this MV in the X2X teaser. Putting that in its basket for a moment, the story continues, mentioning the home she doesn't want to return to. A cold home, full of cracks and holes that the wind whistles through? That sounds like a perfect descriptor for the fuselage we see HaSeul visit. This also seems to fit as we see the person I am beginning to suspect is representative of the Little Match Girl turns away from it, as if she doesn't want to even look at it. We first hear of the visions she has when she lights the flame. Back to those flashes of fire we saw in Let Me In. What do we see when they happen? In the first flash, we see the diamond in Bird HaSeul's eye. A flash of flame showing us a diamond on the ground, and then Bird HaSeul again, over whom the diamond graphic flashes. Shortly after, we see the first diamond HaSeul found on the ground, one of many as there's a trail of them leading down the road. In the same sequence, we see a diamond graphic over the normal HaSeul's eye. On our third flash of fire, we get a setting change. The icy, blackened landscape has changed to a dreary but still very green and healthy one. But soon it changes back to the dark and icy one. On the final flash of fire, we see a paper airplane drift to the ground ahead of the fuselage. Some line graphics of a bird and a paper airplane are framed here. This is the first sequence of rapid flash-by images that we see, much like the ones in Sweet Crazy Love that revealed so much to me when I took a closer look. There should be a second sequence like that in Let Me In, and I imagine I'll find more flashes of fire there. From there, we see HaSeul arrive at the fuselage and investigate. In a dark void, we see the bird HaSeul amidst more bird graphics. And upon another flash of flame, we see normal HaSeul singing behind some branches. This scene repeats in a close-up, showing us the two meeting each other's eyes. Immediately after, normal HaSeul spots the bird through the fuselage's window. The chorus plays, and the bird HaSeul turns away and leaves. As the bridge arrives, we see the dark void again, and watch more flashes of fire take up the screen, along with more sketch graphics. First is an airplane, then several birds. Slow down as far as you can, and you'll see a slide of sketches that shows how to fold a sheet of paper into one. A single paper airplane sketch, then the screen moves upward to show us the normal HaSeul, looking down at a few feathers left on the ground at the edge of some water. More flashes of fire, this time playing directly over shots of Bird HaSeul. And there she is, just a little ways away. Normal HaSeul rushes over, arming herself with a diamond. She She takes aim, she shoots. A flash of the match. Bird HaSeul is struck dead when it hits, accompanied by one final flash of flame. After this, we see normal HaSeul run over where she picks up a small bird, dead from the cold. I think I can explain what I just described. It doesn't make much sense if you look at it from the viewpoint you think you're supposed to, which is third person centered on a normal HaSeul. If you look at it from the viewpoint of Bird HaSeul, as the little match girl, everything starts to fit. I didn't mention this earlier when telling the story of the little match girl, but it doesn't end with her just dying. It ends with her dying and her soul being carried to heaven by the spirit of her grandmother, which was the last vision she saw, and why she struck all of the matches, determined not to let it fade like the rest. The bird version of HaSeul is the little match girl. Fire always comes in accompanied by scenes of Bird HaSeul, and each time she sees something good. She sees the icy overworld change to a pleasant green landscape, and later sees the normal HaSeul, who is our grandmother figure, at least once among branches that put me in mind of the Christmas tree the girl hallucinated as well. The flashes of fire are her lighting the matches so that the visions will stay with her. The fuselage is representative of the cold, barren home she doesn't like, as we already stated. HaSeul, the grandmother figure, is collecting diamonds in her purse, which are related via the sketch graphics with Match Girl HaSeul. The dark, snow-covered void we see her singing in is almost identical to the one we see Chu laying in, seemingly dead, at the end of Heart Attack. Now we take a look at the order of events. The grandmother arrives in the area following a trail of stars, the diamonds. She's looking for someone, it seems. She gets to the fuselage where we see the first contact. This is the match girl's chance to return to her house, which would tell the grandmother it isn't time to take her to heaven yet. But the match girl doesn't take it. The last flashes of the match's flames are the ones we see just before the match girl dies. We can take this to mean she burnt through them all, and the grandmother thus arrives on the scene to take her away, launching her shooting star and thus letting the little match girl die. HaSeul having carried a purse and placed diamonds in them throughout the video, we can assume the soul, thereafter portrayed by a small deceased bird, will then be carried to heaven when she leaves the area. The story describes the sun rising on the girl's frozen corpse, and passerby seeing that she must have tried to stay warm by lighting the matches, but all of them ignorant of the wonderful things she saw before she died. It's no coincidence that this MV was released just before New Year's of 2017, nor is it a coincidence that Chu's video was released just before New Year's of 2018. Just as Eve's New was intended to give us extra context for Every Day I Love You, Chu's Heart Attack was meant to give us extra context for Let Me In. With Chu as the Little Match Girl 2.0, we can now understand what Bird HaSeul really was. And so many people miss the most interesting part of what happens in the story of the Little Match Girl, and that's why the theories surrounding Heart Attack usually have Chu dying after seeing something that isn't real. The story of the Little Match Girl does indeed end with her dead, but the most important part is that not all of her visions were mere hallucinations. The last one she saw was as real as the matches in her hand, and she was indeed taken to a new, happier place by the person she saw in the vision. So what happens after this? Well, now that we've worked out the context for the diamonds, we can enjoy context for the other objects we see in the MV as well, especially since they're called back to later. One of the many things we see in the MV are paper airplanes. Girlfront would later call back to these with a paper airplane being a folded map, which Cherry used to track down 1/3 members. It has the same function here, leading the grandmother HaSeul through Sohaima Sonder and guiding her to where she needs to go. We also can see, now that X2X is out, and confirms that HaSeul does indeed leave the area with her purse of souls and diamonds, that the yellow pickup truck most likely can travel the Looniverse. Speaking of Girlfront, we now have context for that too. Remember the shot of Kimlip shooting another Kimlip with a finger gun, and the close-up of her eye glowing red when she did so? The one that was so like the one we saw in Let Me In? This callback to what we now see as an incidence of someone traveling from one world to another shows us that I might just have been right. Odd eyes allow people to travel between the worlds, and this was Kimlip doing so. What does this mean for HaSeul as of Let Me In? Was I right about the possibility of her having access to the world of Odd? I don't think I was, but I think I was onto something. One of the smaller details in the little match girl's story is where she huddles down with her matches, the corner of two houses, one of which projected farther out onto the street than the other. That's a weird way of saying it, but it does describe a similar situation to what is told to us of the middle cosmos world of Odd. But HaSeul is still an Earth native, and I doubt that she was able to get there without the help of something else, like that transversal yellow truck. What does that mean Gowon was chasing when she ran after the truck in X2X? I said that the cinema theory video that was leaked lets us know that Around You actually takes place fairly late in the Loonaverse's events, and the same is true of Let Me In. If Gowon is chasing HaSeul's truck as it leaves the area, then Shu has already gotten to Earth since she fell before Gowon. HaSeul most likely woke her up on the streets of London shortly before coming to the fuselage site. If Gowon got to Earth, but needed to get to something beyond Earth, she'd need the help of that truck, unless she was willing to risk eating a cherry, I suppose. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to take another shot in the dark. That yellow pickup truck? It's Cherry's. If the subway car in Sweet Crazy Love is representative of Jin's soul traveling the Loonaverse, the yellow truck might represent Cherry's own way of doing so. Since Cherry is friends with HaSeul and Yojin, HaSeul could probably get a lift if she asked. Gowon, who chases the truck, is actually chasing Cherry, who she's met before, as we saw that it was Cherry who delivered Eve's apple to her. So we figured out what the diamonds mean, we figured out what the flashes of fire mean, what the fuselage means, and maybe, just maybe, what the yellow truck means. There's one more symbol we haven't yet observed. Those happen to be feathers. I mentioned that, near the end of the video, just before HaSeul shoots down the little match girl, she's looking at some feathers sitting on the edge of some water. The water most likely being melted snow, I think those represent the actual matches themselves. HaSeul is looking down at the spent matches that the little match girl burned through before she found her. And if the feathers are matches, and the lit matches cause visions of happiness, we may finally have context for the dream catchers that adorn the yellow truck. In Native American mythology, dream catchers are semi-permeable portals, allowing the good dreams through while blocking the bad. This arrangement stops the feathers, aka the matches, from bringing about negative happenings to the Loonaverse while traveling it. Back to HaSeul, Gowon, and Cherry. I said that the little match girl's soul was carried to heaven, but the specific wording in the story was God. We can pretty much conflate this with Eden as we see in the Loonaverse, where our God figure resides. If Let Me In takes place post-Love Cherry Motion and features HaSeul venturing to the world of Odd to track someone down and transport them to Eden, it means that Gowon is likely trying to either catch up and return there herself, or stop the car from getting there. And why would she want to do that? Well, we've got another teaser sitting right there declaring the newest era and title track of LOONA. Burn. Fire is coming to the Loonaverse. It's been here for some time with the matches that were lit in Let Me In, and Olivia destroying various artifacts by lighting them on fire. My guess is that by the time of X2X, either Olivia is still in Eden, or the God figure is still there, and one or both of them is extremely pissed off. If that truck with its dream catchers makes its way to Eden, so will the matches tied to them. And if the wrong person gets a hold of them, things could go up in flames. I think we are finally heading towards our dark concept. This is where the theory wraps up. If you think I'm onto something, let me know down in the comments, and have a great day.